Hi, everyone. We're going to start the program in just a minute. If you could move towards the center of the room, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Bright lights. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us today to celebrate School Choice Week and for everything that you do all the time to empower parents for education freedom and for school choice. My name is Tony DiNicola, and I'm the chairman of Invest in Education Coalition. And today we're here to celebrate National School Choice Week, but also to reintroduce the Educational Choice for Children's Act, which is a bill going through Congress that would empower up to 2 million families every year with educational freedom. As you all know, the Educational Choice for Children's Act has been moving through Congress for the last 2 years because of the support of staunch school choice advocates like Senator Bill Cassidy and Senator Tim Scott, among others. We've got unprecedented support in the House with about 155 members of the House as sponsors in the last conference and 32 members of the U.S. Senate as sponsors of the Educational Choice for Children Act in the Senate. And the goal here over the next 6 to 9 months is to get the ECCA included in the tax reconciliation package when the Trump tax cuts need to be extended. And so as you're on the Hill talking to members of Congress or members of the administration, we have 2 requests. Number one, to deliver on our campaign promises for school choice for all 50 states. And number 2, to make sure that our bill is included in the reconciliation package that has to get done in 2025. Thank you. So the school choice movement has been around for 35 years, and we've made great progress, in particular over the last 5 years. After COVID, over the past 5 years, school choice opportunities have accelerated among half the states across the country, thanks to parents and advocates like you who've empowered more and more families and parents to have the educational freedom to determine the best setting for their children. Nonetheless, as we sit here today, there are 18 states representing about half of the students in the United States that do not have access to school choice. And our bill would augment the opportunities that are already existent in those states with school choice and would create opportunities in those 18 states where there are no choice alternatives for about half of the students across the country. We have powerful, passionate, and dedicated advocates speaking on behalf of the ECCA today. Let me just introduce them, and then I'll call them up to speak. First is my good friend, Senator Bill Cassidy, who has been the lead sponsor of the ECCA since it was first introduced in June of 2022. His entire team have been pivotal in advancing and designing this legislation in the last Congress, and he's going to reintroduce the legislation today in this Congress. My friend Senator Tim Scott, to my right, has been an outspoken leader and promoter of educational freedom and school choice throughout his career. He's been an original sponsor of this bill and has been a passionate and tireless supporter of school choice, and we're delighted to have him here today as an original co-sponsor of the bill. My friend Kellyanne Conway, who is a counselor to the President of the United States, President Trump, and during his first term, and has been a passionate advocate of all things school choice for her entire time with this president and prior to that. And so we're delighted to have Kellyanne here to help us with this mission. And then finally, we have 2 beneficiaries of the school choice world, advocates, if you will, standing to my right. To my far right is Sharon Sedler, who is a parent of 6 daughters and a tireless grassroots advocate for school choice in her home state of Pennsylvania. And this morning, I had the opportunity of sitting with Sharon, her daughter Virginia, and new Senator Dave McCormick from Pennsylvania, and we had a wonderful meeting with the senator who agreed to go on our bill as a new sponsor today. And then to her left is Hera Varma, who's a committed education reform advocate, deep passion for expanding educational choice for all children. She's a former recipient of the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship, and Ms. Varma has firsthand experience of the transformative power and the success that school choice brings to students who have the ability to benefit from them. She has a bachelor's degree from Florida A&M University and is a tireless advocate for school choice. So that's our lineup of speakers, and I'm going to turn it over now to my good friend Kellyanne Conway to introduce others. Thank you, Kellyanne.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that introduction, but certainly for having me here. I'm really pleased to be here, but I do want to start by telling you 25 years ago, I also stood here, actually right across what they call the swamp, outside of the Capitol grounds, doing a similar press conference. But the 2 elected officials that day were former Congressman, pastor of his own church, Floyd Flake of New York City, and former Senator, the late Senator Joe Lieberman, when he was a Democrat. I want to start out by telling you that because they're not here today. We don't have Democrats from the House and the Senate here standing with us today, and I find that to be regrettable. I wish they would just pour in at a moment's notice, that we would fill up the whole place with all 100 senators. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we know we are culturally cleaved, we're politically divided in this town, across this nation, on many different issues. But I simply cannot acknowledge, abide, understand, or accept why you would have nearly an entire political party, half of the country's political representation, less than half now, but it's up there, against giving these kids and their parents a better choice, a better opportunity at accessing the quality, affordable education that they are worthy, just as a matter of dignity and humanity. These are kids. They represent the future. They're innocents, T.S. And to have people standing in the schoolhouse doors 60 years later, again, refusing to let kids of all backgrounds out of these failing schools that just don't serve them well, and allow the money that we all are going to pay anyway to follow those students, and open up the aperture of choices for their parents to have more of a say of where their children go to school and what is taught there, both choice in the schooling and the curricula. We're in the middle of a parents' rights renaissance. It started during COVID. I would say it's been bubbling up for decades. But we saw it full force during COVID. Screen time is school time. Our kitchen island is classrooms. And then it went right into the election of Glenn Youngkin for governor majorly on this issue a year later in 2021. 3 years later, we have President Trump, school choice proponent, pro-educational reform, a new executive order out today, told me on my Fox Nation show September 30th that if ECCA, if the Educational Choice for Children Act is put on his desk as president, he would sign it into law. He has repeated that several times since. Every time he is asked, he's made that commitment. Now it's up to this chamber, and the one across the way to put it on his desk. We are so close to doing that. We are so close to, fortunately, pushing forward a piece of legislation that would be the most robust, most broad and sweeping piece of legislation to ever be enacted from a federal level, really mimicking what's been happening at the state level. When we were in the White House, there were 0 universal school choice programs in the states. We now have 12 because the work started then in earnest, and we now have 12. The educational savings accounts, ESAs, that have blossomed in all these different states that allow parents to use those monies for everything from tuition to backpacks to tech learning to transportation to pens and pencils if they must, and tutoring, of course, if they need it. So we cannot pretend to tell parents, we hear you, we see you, we're here for you, we're the party that loves and respects and includes you, and then ignore their chief concern. In addition to the ECCA, which has, as Tony, a huge champion and supporter of school choice for decades now, has so correctly pointed out, over 145, I think, co-sponsors in the House. That's huge. We have, I think, 32 or so senators now, including a few new ones that just walked into this building recently. But the legislation in the House has gotten the furthest that any piece of legislation of its ilk, of its breadth and its depth, has ever made it through any single committee. So the momentum is with us. What must we do now? We must explain that this is an issue that when described fairly and correctly and accurately, gains what I call tripartisan support. Wild majorities of Republicans and independents, and a plurality, sometimes a slim majority, of self-identified Democrats. I'm sure people are going to lie about it. People are going to try to confuse the situation, worry more about the teachers' unions and the teachers' ability to teach our great students. We're asking for a parent-centric, student-centric policy to flood through the halls of Congress and to reach all the way to 1600 Pennsylvania. We would love your help in doing so. We would love to keep our focus on what matters most, that these children deserve a chance. And let me just tell you, this would be $10 billion in funding, and it would affect up to 2 million students. That's in addition to what's going on in our states, what's going on locally. The First Lady, Melania Trump, again the First Lady now, twice welcomed guests in her box at the State of the Union addresses in 2017 perhaps, and in 2019. In 2020, we had a young girl and her mom there. She had been victim of Governor Tom Wolf's vetoing school choice charter school programs 3 different times. So for those who are pretending to be for kids, we say welcome. We do not want this to be a partisan issue. Taking care of our children, expanding school choice opportunities, opportunity scholarships, the choice of parents to say where their children go to school and what is taught there, and to help these kids get a really great chance at life. I'm going to end by saying this. My kids go to great schools because I can afford to do that. And that's why I'm involved. I was raised by a single mom in a house of all women. My mom, her mom, 2 of my mom's unmarried sisters, they scraped it together to keep me in the local Catholic school. I think my senior year tuition was $2,600. It was not that much, but it was a lot for them. But that was very important to my mother to do. But I say this because I don't begrudge the Obamas and the Clintons for sending their 3 daughters to one of the finest private schools in Washington, D.C., Sidwell Friends. Good for them. If their daughters have the capability and the intelligence to do so, and they did, if the Obamas and the Clintons had the resources to do that, and they did, that's wonderful. But I will never understand or accept why both of those presidents vetoed the D.C. Opportunity Scholarship Program, so that other kids also living in the city could have some of those same opportunities. So with that, I would call upon lots of Democrats, independents, and all of our Republicans to join the fight. And I'm just the warm-up band here. Now onto the main program. It gives me great pleasure to reintroduce Senator Bill Cassidy. He's been in the Senate for 10 years now. He, of course, was in the state legislature before that, is a doctor, and has long been an advocate of better health outcomes, has volunteered his time, his treasure, and his talent in making that happen. And he's also a very big advocate of school choice, as Tony says. He's been part of the bill and the new bill all along, but now he's the chairman of the Help Committee, and I'd like to say to him, he also soon enough will see Philadelphia Eagles fans like me in his city next Sunday. So, Senator and now chairman of the Help Committee, Bill Cassidy.
Thank you, Karen. So I walk in, I see Tony. I said, Tony, thank you for all your good work in terms of making this happen. He goes, no, it is everybody here. It is all of you that have brought us to this point. And what is the point where we are? I thought, I know the power of education. My parents, for all practical purposes, didn't go to college. But by golly, their children were. And so I went to public school and public high school and to public medical college and medical school. And by golly, the son of a woman who was in a sharecropper family, a tenant farmer family in South Carolina, and 1 year did not go to school because she didn't have shoes. Because of education, has a son who's a gastroenterologist, a senator, living the American dream. That's the power of education. And Kellyanne spoke about 25 years ago. Somebody 25 years from now is going to speak of, hey, remember that event in which we talked about the ECAA, ECCA, and now we have people standing to our right whose children benefited. And by the way, one of those children is in medical school. And maybe one of those children is a congressman. And won't it be kind of sweet pain for Republicans if that congressman is a Democrat? But the point being is that what we are doing today is going to have generational ramifications. And all of you have helped to accomplish that. Now, we can argue, hey, Bill Cassidy, you went to public schools. Why shouldn't we just leave people in public schools? Unfortunately, school performance has declined. And by the way, I'll also say there's increasing recognition of the diversity of how children learn. Full disclosure, my wife is the CEO of a public charter school, of a system of 3 public charter schools for children with dyslexia. The children that go to her school would not learn otherwise. This allows a parent to send her child to that school if her child is one of that 20% of the population that has dyslexia. And I could go through example after example of the benefit of which we speak. So, I'm privileged to be with my friend Tim Scott. She called herself the warm-up act. He's the main speaker. You're gonna feel like it's a revival after he speaks. But the bill provides a charitable contribution, a charitable donation to incentivize individuals and businesses to fund scholarships for K through 12. I said, Tony, is this going to be some Tony private school where the parents have so much money they don't need it? He goes, no. These are for the middle income and the lower income families. These are for the families that could not otherwise afford. And it's going to give them the opportunity that they otherwise would not have. And I would say it's not just the child that does not have, it's the parent who does not have. It is a parent right now who kind of looks over that fence and thinks, wouldn't it be great if my child could attend at that school and unlock my child's potential, but instead she might be trapped in a school which she knows fails. There's a wonderful scripture, when the people have no hope, they despair. We want to give hope. And the hope is of the power of education so that the next generation is better than this generation, and so that 25 years from now, generations have been altered. And let me finish by where I started. Thank you all for making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Senator and Chairman Cassidy. Now I'd like to introduce Senator Tim Scott, who describes himself as having unbridled optimism. That comes in large part from his upbringing and his version of the American dream, which I'll let him tell you about. But most significantly, it is Senator Tim Scott in the Senate and Congressman Burgess Owens from Utah in the House, who originally had co-sponsored the ECCA. We know it will happen again. I'm with Tony. I hope it's in reconciliation. I was just down at the House Republican retreat as a speaker yesterday, where I made a big push for the ECCA and school choice. And even when asked, how do we explain reconciliation to our constituents? Well, it's a special thing, but what does reconciliation mean, small r, in everyday life? It means to align things that aren't in opposite, but that are just not connected the way they need to be. And it would be wonderful to have this rare tool, which was there for the Reagan, Bush, Trump tax cuts, a little bit for the American Rescue Plan, and some other matters, to include this very important piece of legislation. Today, President Trump is signing an executive order to loosen funding of the Department of Defense, Interior, and the Education Department, just to find ways for parents of students who are under the domain of those different departments and agencies to shake loose some federal funding for schools of their choosing. So everybody's going to tell you he's cutting all the programs, pausing federal aid. That's one that he's unleashed this week, because that's a big priority to the president and this White House and National School Choice Week. Senator Tim Scott is also a co-chair of the School Choice Caucus here in the Senate, putting his full weight behind this piece of legislation and the different adjuncts. So without further ado, Senator Tim Scott.
Thank you, Kellyanne. Thank you, Tony, for investing your time, your energy, and your resources in what I believe is the civil rights issue of our era. Now, I know this is a rhetorical question, but I still want to see you raise your hands. How many of y'all in this room support school choice? About 83%. That's just interesting. Think about this reality. School choice includes public schools. If you are living in the best neighborhoods and affluent neighborhoods, you send your child to a local public school. If you're the wealthiest Americans, you choose a school and you send your kids there. It's only middle income and folks working paycheck to paycheck that do not have access to school choice. And if you think about the powerful words spoken by Kelly Ann, she said it so quickly, I don't want us to miss what she said. I literally had to pull out my pen, take out a piece of paper to write it down. There was unfortunately a time in our country's history where there were adults in power locking kids out of quality education during my lifetime. Literally adults standing at doors in schools not allowing kids in. And today, there are kids locked out of quality education because there are literally adults standing at the door locking kids into failing schools. Proverbs 13:12 reminds us that hope deferred makes the heart sick. There are millions of parents today all across the greatest nation on earth whose hope has been deferred because they're on long waiting lists, trying to get their child, their future, their dream into a quality place for education. Because of the efforts of Tony and so many others, we stand on the doorsteps of the greatest transformative power in the public forum, which is quality education. It is our responsibility to lean into this moment. We have this year, this reconciliation vehicle hour, in the words of President Trump, this big, beautiful bill. It needs to include ECCA. This is truly an equalizer that breathes hope into our poorest communities. It's an equalizer that allows for the meritocracy that we want America to be, to have a chance of being a reality. Because you can't have a merit-based system when millions and millions of kids trapped in rural America or inner city America have no access to quality education. And it is, in fact, the way we maximize human potential in the greatest land on the planet. If we do not act with a sense of urgency, if we do not allow ourselves to lean into this fight, we might miss this window of opportunity that might not come back anytime soon. So here's my ask. Don't just applaud. Kellyanne was fantastic. Bill Cassidy was on fire today. Tony's always cool as a cucumber. But let me just say this. We can't sit back and hope and pray. We should pray, but then we should get off our knees and call our legislators. We should get off our knees and make sure that every single person in Congress understands the sense of urgency that we have as constituents, as Americans, not simply as voters, but as constituents. Because we, the elected, we don't just represent those who vote for us. We represent the United States of America. And on this issue, Democratic elected officials may not support it, but Democrat voters do support, in large numbers, 70% of African Americans support school choice. 60+% of Hispanics support school choice. Families working paycheck to paycheck in blue-collar America support school choice. Everybody and a majority support school choice. Let us not do our parts as citizens of this great nation to make available to some of the brightest kids that grew up in neighborhoods like I did when I was growing up in a single-parent household in poverty. Let's not let those kids down. They can't afford a lobbyist, but they have you, and that's enough.
So lest you think it's all just a piece of paper, a piece of legislation, let's hear from two women who will testify to you firsthand the positive effects of school choice. We'll begin with Sharon Tedler. Thank you. And then we'll hear from, you don't need me to come back, Hera Varma.
Thank you so much for having me here today to talk about my 6 amazing daughters who I'm very proud of. And no one realizes more than I do. Well, maybe you do, but I realize that every single one of my kids has different talents, different skills, and definitely different attitudes and different needs. And it's because of that you know, they needed different education environments throughout their years. A couple of my kids graduated from district school. That was the right place for them, but not for all of my children. So in 2nd grade, my youngest, Virginia, had completely debilitating anxiety. She could not function in the district environment. She had been fine before, but something changed for her, and she felt unsafe. So I had to bring her home, where she received the therapeutic and academic help that she needed so she could feel safe and so that she could learn. I realized that there were many other parents who felt just as trapped, ignored, stonewalled, and yes, even sometimes threatened or blamed for their child's difficulty. It shouldn't be that way. Parents shouldn't feel trapped. We shouldn't feel unable to satisfy our children's needs. So I realized that me, being a fairly assertive parent, very active in my community, if I didn't know what I should do and I didn't know where to turn and I was at a loss, how many other parents were going through that same thing? How many parents in urban environments didn't understand how the system works or that they had options? You would be surprised how few realize that there are alternatives because they're trapped. They are rendered powerless and helpless in a system that's supposed to be educating our children. Too many children have to endure education for years. Sometimes it's a couple, sometimes it's all 13, in an education environment that doesn't suit them. And so I'm very thankful that we have people in this room who are dedicated to returning power and agency into parents' hands so that we can navigate the education system. We can provide the services our children need when they need it so that they don't have to suffer any longer. We appreciate the opportunity and the freedom that America provides. We need to provide that to our children in far greater fashion. I'm going to tell you about a parent, and this is an example of some of the deficiencies in our system and how the ECCA would have greatly helped her. She has a son who is dyslexic and autistic. They are English as a second language family. Both parents work, they scrimp, and they save. Their son attends district school because it's the best option for him. He was a 6th grader with a preschool reading level last year. That's what education did for him. And his mom fights. She fights so hard. What they're doing now is they're paying $500 a month for an out-of-state online literacy tutor, money that they really don't have. so that he can now be a 7th grader with 4th grade reading skills. That's the dedication of these parents. This is how hard they have to fight. This is how much they have to pay. They have to pay with family time. They have to pay with their sanity, their emotional well-being, their physical well-being. So thank you. Thank you so much for your words, for your work, for your dedication, because after all, our children deserve every opportunity and freedom in our United States.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hera Varmint. I'm from the great state of Florida, and I just want to say thank you for all of you in this room, especially to Senator Scott and Cassidy, because this is not just great legislation. This is a lived experience. This is my family's lived experience. I'm one of 12 children born to 2 immigrant parents from Jamaica and West Africa. And growing up, my parents always told us that the key to success was education. And they also told us that barriers are meant to be broken. A big barrier was that there was 12 of us. There's a lot of mouths to feed. But also that the public school that we started in wasn't an adequate choice for my family. Me and my 3 older brothers started off in Ghana, West Africa in elementary school, where any sort of education you received, you had to pay for that education. And so for first time in my life, I'm a privileged person. I'm a lucky person to be born to have a little bit of my grandfather being able to help us out for us to go to school. Fast forward, we come back to the States because my parents knew that the chance that we would get at success was by living the American dream. And so came back over to the States, ended up in Florida, where we just so lucked out that tax credit was just passed. And we actually still started off in the public school, where my 2 older brothers, who shot off like rockets, they were so smart, and me and my 3rd older brother were just jealous, and we used to look at my mom like, how could you do this to us? But me and my 3rd older brother, we struggled. And I did not feel smart, didn't feel adequate. So my mom knew that in order for us to have a chance, that she needed to find a better school for us. And like I said, we had the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship that had just passed. And so through that scholarship, they found a middle school for us. And I still struggled a bit. My older brother still struggled a bit. But by the end of our 8th grade year, it finally clicked for us. Fast forward, we're now looking at 4 college graduates, 1 mechanical engineer, 1 chemical engineer, 1 in medical school, and myself fighting for educational freedom for all students across the country. But we don't stop there. I did tell you we had an army. So we have 6 in university. And then we have 2 actually graduating this year. And then we have 2 following in our footsteps in high school, and we've threatened them with bodily harm if they let us down. So when I look at school choice, when people say school choice doesn't work and there's all these debates that are going on, I simply show them my family. I show them that with the right education, with a chance at success, that we were able to go to college, that I went from feeling stupid compared to my brothers to testifying in front of the Ways and Means Committee at the age of 24. School choice works. And you guys wouldn't all be here if you guys didn't believe that too. I am so excited for this. I am excited because if we get out of the way of children, we will not keep losing gifted minds. So I want to thank you guys again for coming. I want to thank you guys for the support. And I'm excited to get to work, really. So thank you all.
All right, before we close, I just wanted to mention that we do have several students here. A lot of students are in school, so they couldn't make it. But we have, I think, 5 or 6 students from the Yeshiva of Greater Washington. And one of them, Adiv, is here, and he prepared some remarks. I would love to have Adiv come up and just give us a few remarks.
Good afternoon, honored senators who left, and all advocates for school choice. My name is Adiv Shadovsky. I'm a resident of Kent Mill, Montgomery County, Maryland, and I'm a senior at the Yeshiva of Greater Washington. My school is an Orthodox Jewish middle and high school with a dual curriculum of Judaic and General Studies, and has been a pillar of the Maryland educational community for 60 years. As Orthodox Jews and as Americans living under the First Amendment that give us the freedom of religion, it's of the utmost significance that we have received our formal education in a setting that reflects the teachings of our faith and our home. The strong educational foundation that I've experienced at yeshiva and before that in lower school at Berman Hebrew Academy in Rockville has prepared me for the role that I hope to assume as a successful professional in today's American society and as an upstanding member in the greater Jewish community. Our school, much like other private schools, struggles to balance its finances, the upkeep of its facilities, the salary of its teachers, the equipment, the cost of supplies, and all those things. In order to balance all of that, they would surely, one would think, opt to charge a tuition that allows them to do all of that without cutting any corners. However, the burden that would place on the families, many of whom are middle and lower income, would cause a stranglehold on the finances of those families. And as a result, our school provides hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships each year to grant this genuine dual education, both Jewish and general studies, to each student, regardless of limitations. The creation of this ECCA bill that we're here to talk about today will undoubtedly be a game changer for millions of families, for our families and for millions of families across the nation. We so greatly appreciate the leadership of the senators for pushing forward this bill, as well as the chairman and all of you here for the countless hours of work that you put into this. May God bless your efforts, and may we all see great success in this pursuit. Thank you so much.
Adiv, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. And so that officially concludes the agenda today. Our members of our team are here. We're happy to take questions and talk to anybody that wants to talk to us. But thank you so much for all that you do to empower parents and for school choice. And this is the year we have to get ECCA included in the reconciliation bill. So thank you for all your support.